皆さんおはようございます。こんにちは、こんばんは。すみられいでございます。というわけで、本日はね、ちょっと変わった動画です。ちょっと変わってないよ。この前やったわ、似たような。あれです。動画に対するリアクション動画です。はい。動画に対するリアクション動画。はい。そういう感じでございます。で、本日は、モウリーニョです。ユナイテッドにいた頃のモウリーニョ。僕最近すごい思うことがあって、モウリーニョを残した方が良かった説っていうのはあると思うんだよね、僕割と。今ってさ、例えばメイヌがいたり、ガルナチョがいたり、ホイルノがいたりって結構さ、いい感じに、なんか、やる気がめちゃくちゃある若手が結構いるわけじゃん。で、モウリーニョは割とそういうの好きじゃんで、結構、最近だと、僕も詳しくは知らないんだけど、ローマでも結構若手使ってるみたいな話があるみたいで、特にユース下がりとかね。で、なんならユナイテッド今さっきの3人に加えて、ハンニバルがいたり、あとダンゴアとかも、出始めて、カンブアラとかも出つつある。それはもちろん怪我があって仕方がないっていう手ももちろんあるんだけど、それに加えて割と質が高い、特に最近のユース上がり組っていうので、割とモウリーニョを残してやったらめちゃくちゃいい感じになったんじゃないかっていう説が僕の中であって、本日はちょっとそれを思ってね、ユナイテッドにいた頃のモウリーニョについての動画に対するリアクションやっていきます。で、一応ね、YouTube の字幕を自動翻訳ではあるけども、日本語をつけているので、ちょっと分かりづらいなとかあったら補足したり、あとは途中で止めたりして、リアクションしていきます。で、いつも通り、概要欄に本動画の方も貼っておりますので、ぜひそちらの方も見ていただいて、もしチャンネル登録とかもね、英語分かるという方はしていってください。では、やっていきます。はい、ではやっていきましょう。
So, I've made a lot of videos about Mourinho, but they were mostly about how great everything was. This one is different. It's about the most infamous team he ever managed. It's about what happens when you get a serial winner to manage a team of players who only care about fame, ruled by men who only care about money, supported by fans who only care about short-term glory.
まずここからだよね。何もかもが終わってるよね。選手は割と結構個人次第で、この前出した動画でもさ、3人か4人か今、現在残ってる、ショー、ラッシュ、マルシャルが終わってるっていう話はあったけど、ポグバも途中で、ポグバね、仲悪くなったのは本当に残念だよね。っていう話もあったりするけど、何よりも、グレカスはさておき、本当ファンも本当に短期的なことしか興味がないっていうのは間違ってないと思うし、だから今、テンハグのいるいらないっていう話もさ、1試合ごとで評価が変わるっていうのは大概ではねっていう話はあるよね。
It's the story of when Mourinho managed a team who did not want to win. It's the classic scenario where an unstoppable force meets an immovable object. It's Mourinho at Manchester United.
今のは比喩表現ね。要は縦矛みたいなもん、感覚としては。
So the first question that should be answered is why would Mourinho, one of the greatest managers of all time, want to manage Manchester United? I mean, that sounds a bit wrong. Man United are a gigantic club, but my point is that back in 2016, they were in a seriously rough spot. It had only been 3 years since the retirement of Sir Alex Ferguson, and he had already tried to replace him 3 different times. The first man to get a job was David Moyes, who in just 10 months managed to destroy everything Fergie had built, landing United at 7th place with the lowest points tally in the history of the club. Then club legend Ryan Giggs took over as interim coach, only to resign after 4 matches, claiming he just couldn't deal with the pressure. Finally, they decided to bring out the big guns, signing Louis van Gaal, thinking that a guy with his resume could never fail, but instead he spent 200
今のところね、2億2億かな ?2 億使って成果が出ませんでしたって。今2億って言ったよね。2億だね。2億ユーロ使って成果が出ませんでしたっていうのは間違ってないんだけどさ、今の状態でも結構ユナイテッドめちゃくちゃ金使っとるやんっていう。だからグレカスのせいで金ないっていうほざく割には金使っとるやんってよく言われるんだけど、外の方々が分かっていないのは、うちは金が使えていないことが問題なんじゃなくて、金の使い方がクソ下手くそだっていうのが問題なわけじゃん。だからそこはちょっと話のあれとしてちょっと間違ってるなっていうふうには思うんだけど、ね、バンハールね、どこまでが本人の意思でどこまでがクラブが適当なものをついてきたのかよくわかんないっていうのが本当に問題だよね、現状。だからSD が必要だって僕らずっと言ってるわけなんだけど。
million, only to settle for a 4th place finish and an FA Cup trophy, which as you might imagine meant he also ended up getting sacked. leaving his spot up for the taking, which is exactly when Mourinho came into the picture, because he had just been sacked for the first time in his career, only 7 months after leading Chelsea to the Premier League title. But how was that even possible, you ask? Well, first Mourinho got in trouble with the board over not getting the budget he demanded, then he clashed with one of his staff members, leading to their departure, worsening his relationship with the squad, eventually losing the dressing room, claiming that the players had betrayed his philosophy, and leaving the club 1 point above the relegation zone. If you're wondering why I've gone so in-depth on this, well, it will sound familiar soon. But the point is, Mourinho's reputation was at an all-time low. He had flirted with the idea of joining United for a while, maintaining a great relationship with Sir Alex, and considering that United were claiming their only goal was to win, and that Mourinho was known for being able to win anywhere at any cost, no matter how bad the squad he had available was, a lot of people saw him as the perfect man for the job. And with Guardiola, his lifelong nemesis, joining rivals Man City that same year, while many claimed Mourinho was just growing bored of the sport, now there was no chance he'd be lacking motivation. The only problem was that Guardiola was inheriting a team that had finished top 2 in 4 out of the last 5 years, with players like Agüero, De Bruyne and David Silva, while the most notorious players Mourinho was getting was a Wayne Rooney who was on his final year at United, a Bastian Schweinsteiger was 4 matches away from leaving to the MLS, and well...
何シュワインスタイガー取ったのか未だに謎っちゃ謎だけどね。でね、あと2年早かったら絶対よかったよね。あと2年早くモーリーニョが来てたらとどうしても思う、正直。まあ、デヘアは黄金期ですけども。
David De Gea. Even Schneiderlin managed 39 appearances that season. So, yeah, not great. But still, all that meant was that it was time to get to work. So first, there was one clear problem. The most prolific goal scorer in the squad was Martial, and even he settled for a measly 17 goals in all competitions. So Mourinho pulled out his phone and called an old buddy from his Inter Milan days, Zlatan Ibrahimovic. Sure.
今の見た字幕。イブラヒモビッチのビッチがさ、センサーされてんの時代だよね。
You could complain that he was 34 and therefore only a temporary solution, but man, not only was he a free agent, but he was still as hungry as ever, he worshipped Mourinho, and above all, he had finished the previous season with 50 goals and 19 assists in 51 matches. He simply could not fail. The next problem was obvious, and well, it was the entire backline. Darmian, Smalling and Valencia were just not good enough. Daley Blind never really settled at United, and Phil Jones and Shaw, though still both promising at the time, were injury time bombs about to go off. I think Ed Mourinho realized just how bad those injuries would be. Maybe they've signed more defenders, and to be fair, he did approach both Hummels and Varane, but given how stingy Ed Woodward and the rest of the board were...
はい、はい。先般です。我らが先般って嫌だな。クソド先般の、ウッドワード君です。はい。
He was forced to settle for just Eric Bailly, which is just ironic, but moving on. To finish off his spending spree with a tired midfield composed of Schweinsteiger, Mata, Carrick and Fellaini, Mourinho looked to bring some hunger back into it, and so, first he opted for a bit of a bargain, paying £26 million for the at the time Bundesliga Player of the Year and top assist provider, Mkhitaryan. Yeah. And then, finally they signed maybe the most promising young midfielder in the world, Paul Pogba, for £96 million, the most expensive signing of all time, which was especially ironic considering United had let him leave for free just 4 years earlier. All I have to say about that is that according to many sources, Mourinho wanted Kanté, Pogba was proposed to him by the board. Yeah, I guess they were just trying to fix their mistake, but instead they ended up just doubling down on it. I cannot even put into words the amount of drama this transfer brought to the team. Regardless, somehow, what bothered me the most about this transfer window was that Mourinho, known for clearing out all the deadwood once he arrived at a new club, just did not do that at all, only selling 3 relevant players, which always left me to wonder if someone... Still, with that done, the season started, and would you guess it, right on his first official match, Mourinho took his first trophy, beating Leicester to the Community Shield with a goal by Zlatan. However, in the league, things didn't go as well. By the fourth match day, he had already been beaten by Guardiola. By the eighth, he was already getting suspended for criticizing the referees. That same month, all three players I mentioned, Shaw, Jones and Bailly, as well as Valencia and Mkhitaryan, were all sidelined with serious injuries, and by the end of the month, Mourinho was already losing it, being sent into the stands for protesting too much, as well as dropping the iconic quote, "We may not have A, B, C, D, E, F and G, but we have L, M, N, SOP." Regardless, even if United were already 8 points away from the top of the table, the cup was another story. Not only had he knocked Guardiola's Man City out of the competition, but he would go on to beat West Ham, Hull City and Southampton, taking his second trophy of the season by mid-February, already establishing this as the most successful season in the post-Ferguson era. And the funny thing is, the best was definitely still to come. You see, so far the Europa League campaign had been uninspiring, with defeats to Fenerbahce and Feyenoord, struggling to even make it out of the group stage and then struggling even more from the round of 16 onwards, settling for draws in the first legs of their matches against Rostov and Anderlecht, going as far as only managing to beat the Belgians in extra time. But regardless, following a slightly more comfortable win over Celta de Vigo, suddenly United were in the final, and though back then it didn't seem as daunting, this uninspiring United side was up against an Ajax team that already contained in its roster the likes of De Ligt, De Jong, Ziyech, Van de Beek and Neres, who were only 2 years away.
ファンデビークがまだ強いと予想されていた頃です。皆様よろしくお願いします。ファンデビークさん、まだ強いです。
from nearly making it to the Champions League final. But well, in classic Mourinho fashion, Ajax watched as Pogba scored the opener against the flow of the match, and if after that United were already on the back foot, once Mkhitaryan scored 3 minutes into the second half, things got seriously shocking, with Ajax being allowed 72% of possession, as well as 11...
これすごいよね、モーリーニョ。ポゼッション 72% 取られて、28% ポゼッションでよく勝てるよねっていう。
11 shots in 40 minutes, only to still somehow come out of it completely scoreless. Even if United's league performance had been dreadful, getting fewer wins at Old Trafford and even relegated Hull City had managed at their own stadium, Mourinho had proven his word. He had proven that he was still a serial winner, taking 3 trophies in his first season, more than Moyes and Van Gaal had managed over their 3 seasons in charge, and made even sweeter by the fact it included their first European trophy in 9 years. Regardless, even as the season came to this unexpectedly hopeful end, a lot of fans and most of the media didn't seem happy with Mourinho. He was already being labeled as some sort of villain, but according to them, his only crime had been boring football.
これだよね、ユナイテッド。なんつうか、勝ててるだけマシじゃねとは感じるけどね。まあ勝ててないんだけど、実際そのトロフィー。だからさっき言ってたそのユナイテッドの皆様がファンの皆様が短絡的思考しかできないっていう。
And the only thing allowing Mourinho to rise above these critics were the trophies. As he would say, there are a lot of poets in football, but poets, they don't win much. But unfortunately for Mourinho, soon neither would he. You see, the second season was all about the league. Mourinho was known for his second seasons. In fact, he had won the league in every single one of them, but with a 6th place finish in his first, it looked impossible, and the board wasn't helping. After missing out on Hummels and Varane the previous season in favor of the man of glass himself, Eric Bailly, it looked even stranger when United kicked off the season by signing Lindelof from Benfica, a player Mourinho was quick to tell the press he didn't know much about, saying,
これだよね。結局勝手に取ってくるっていう。そこなんだよね。で、リンデルフが今うまいかって言ったら微妙じゃん。って考えるとまあ。
The decision to sign him came from inside the club. And then came another strange situation. With Rooney gone and Ibra completely stuck in injury hell, Mourinho wanted above all to make a statement by signing a world-class forward, but when he went for Neymar, well, saying PSG outbid him is an understatement. Then he got super close signing Griezmann, but Atletico were hit with a transfer ban, and the Frenchman ended up shutting down any talks as he was too scared the fans would turn on him if he left the club hanging like that. And between that and the board's strange dealings, United ended up instead signing Lukaku from Everton for £75 million. And I mean, he was young, already familiar with Mourinho from his time back at Chelsea, he had been shortlisted for PFA Player of the Year and had nearly taken the Golden Boot while at Everton. Everton, so it made sense. But compared to Neymar or Griezmann, well, what can I even say? Add to this the purchase of Matic, a great player Mourinho has repeatedly relied on throughout his career, as well as the sale of a single player, Januzaj, and once again, you got the feeling that Mourinho had been uncharacteristically inactive in the transfer market. Where was the manager known for arriving and cleaning up the house in one sweep? Something was off, and everyone's eyes looked in one direction, the board and the owners. Regardless, as the season started, United shocked everyone, going 12 matches undefeated, scoring 4 goals or more in half of those matches. But somehow, they were still 2 points below Man City, and to make matters worse, they lost the following match against Huddersfield Town, out of all teams. Then, following another bad moment against Chelsea 2 weeks later, despite being hit with an injury crisis, they still managed to go on a streak of 13 matches where they only lost against Man City. But again, despite only 3 defeats in their first 24 matches, City had somehow managed to go 12 points in front with a damn near perfect record, and still, somehow, Mourinho was the most criticized manager in the league, leading him to complain about not being able to compete with Man City's budget, saying they bought fullbacks for the price of strikers. And I mean, just take a look at their starting 11s when they faced each other. Except for Ederson and Delph, City had superior players in every single position. So when January arrived, it was time to try to somehow salvage the season, and that's when the opportunity presented itself. Ibra left for LA Galaxy, Arsenal showed interest in Mkhitaryan, and meanwhile, Alexis Sanchez, who had hit 48 goal contributions in 4,200 minutes just 6 months earlier, was now undervalued after repeatedly insisting that he wanted to leave the club. So, in the most convenient of manners, the two clubs simply traded players, and the only downside of the deal, Alexis Sanchez became the most well-paid player in the country, receiving £500,000 a week. Had he just effortlessly gone back to playing like he used to, as seemingly everyone predicted he would, this would have been fine, but instead, he would score only 5 goals for United over the next 2 years, setting his cost at around 10 million per goal. It was easily one of the worst transfers in history. In fact, Sanchez never fit Mourinho's style. A lot of the fans still question to this day if Mourinho even approved of his signing, as he constantly mentioned that it was his will to sign Perisic over him. And so, all Sanchez brought was more instability, more chaos, more doubt, and even managed to disrupt the progression of Golden Boy Anthony Martial along the way. And with one thing added to the other, over the next half of the season, everything began derailing. After defending him tirelessly, in January, Mourinho finally gave in to the criticism of Pogba, subbing him off against Tottenham and having a public fight right there on the sidelines, eventually leading club legends like Paul Scholes to make things worse by publicly slating Pogba and other elements of the team, leading to a clear dip in the team's spirits. Eventually culminating in 4 more defeats over the final 13 matches of the season, finishing second place, 19 points below City. But look, City finished the league with a record-breaking 100 points. There was no stopping them, and still, in a season with such strong opposition, Mourinho managed to get United to 81 points. 81, the same amount Leicester had when they won the league 2 years earlier, and 11 more points than any other manager since Fergie. In fact, Mourinho had managed more points per game than Ferguson had managed in 6 out of his 13 title-winning seasons in the Premier League era. As he would say 1 year later, "I think finishing second with Man United was one of the biggest achievements of my career." You'll say I'm crazy, but that's because people don't know what happened behind the scenes. And well, I'll just say this, I certainly don't think Mourinho is as crazy as the media tried to make him out to be. Still, with an early exit in the Champions League and a defeat to Chelsea in the FA Cup final, Mourinho now lacked the one thing that made him invulnerable to criticism: silverware. And so, everything crumbled. To start, Rui Faria, who had been Mourinho's assistant manager for 15 years, finally got tired of all this mess and left the club, which was especially problematic as he had often been credited with keeping the locker room in check after Mourinho's outbursts, often calming things down between Pogba and Mourinho. So once he left, well, Pogba won the World Cup, leading Mourinho to give him a backhanded compliment saying that the World Cup is the perfect place for him because it's a full month with no distractions. Then he made his discontent to the board public once again, claiming he gave them a list of 5 players and they couldn't get him a single one of them. After the opening match arrived, Pogba came out saying, "You can't give your best if you're not happy," which Mourinho felt was directed at him, leading him to tell Pogba to ask for a transfer if he wants to leave so badly. And after a month month, mostly known for another press conference freakout by Mourinho where he stood up from his seat demanding respect, reminding everyone that he had won 3 Premier League titles, more than all the other managers in the league put together. Pogba decided to come out criticizing his tactics after a draw against Wolves, saying that great teams need to attack, leading Mourinho to pretty much put him in his place, literally telling him, "You're a good player, not a special player," and then stripping him of the captain's armband and sending the drama into complete overdrive, with Mourinho going nuts, first with the two being recorded as they got into a confrontation in training, then with Mourinho swearing into a TV camera after beating Newcastle, and finally chasing Chelsea's assistant coach down the tunnel, eventually ending it all by describing Pogba as a virus in front of the entire squad, saying, "You pass your virus to the others, you don't play, you don't respect the other players or the supporters, and you kill the mentality of good, honest people around you," completely burning any bridges left between them, leading Pogba's agent Raiola to claim he demanded an extra £200,000 a week in order to stay at the club, before claiming that if these requests weren't met, Lukaku, another player represented by Raiola, would also leave. So, knowing United's board, guess what they did next? They fired Mourinho, and on the day of his sacking, Pogba made sure to post a picture on Instagram mocking Mourinho before deleting it shortly after. And as it all came to an end, many felt the need to point out one thing. Wasn't this the exact same thing that happened at Chelsea?
そういうことね。冒頭のね。というわけで、以上でありございますけどね。僕もね、モーリーニョね、残していいと思ってるんだよね、未だに。残してよかったって。いや、なんていうか、今トレンドがさ、ポゼッションサッカーじゃん。トレンドがね。トレンドがポゼッションサッカーで、グアルディオラのせいというかおかげというかで、みんなポゼッションサッカーをしたがるじゃん。で別にそれが、僕は悪いことだと全然思ってないんだけど、別にそれが正解じゃないと思ってる人で、なんならユナイテッドなんてさ、ここ最近のまとまり方で試合なんて全部要は相手の裏ついて潰すっていう、一種のカウンターに近いショートカウンター、ロングカウンターをさておきにっていう形だからさ、別に僕それでいいと思うし、それの方が向いてる。今の選手とか考えても、例えばラッシュ、裏抜け、別に対面もできるし、それよりも多分、でも実際ゴール決めてる時って大体裏抜けて爆速で相手を置き去りにするプレイ。で、ガルナチョもそっちの方が得意だし。で、ホイルンドもさ、フィジカルあるけどさ、アタランタの時に決めてるゴールとか見たらそっちの方が多いわけじゃん。多いっていうかそっちがかなり多い。で、もちろん、ボックス内で、決めきるっていうのもあるけども、それ以上にスピードっていうのが特徴で、アントニーも速いじゃん。で、じゃあ、うちで一番クリエイティブな人材誰かっつったら、ブルーノっていう、すでにシーズン通してビッグチャンス101個作ってる選手。で、それに唯一違いの誰ですかって言ったらエジルなわけで。で、エジルといえばって言ったら、僕の中でマドリーの頃のロナウドアシストしまくってた頃。で、じゃあ、マドリーのエジルとロナウドどういうプレイでしたかって言ったら、爆速カウンター。で、ブルーノも絶対そういうのにできるじゃん。クリエイティブっていう面では。って考えるとさ、あれってなるわけよ。モーリーニョ今のチーム監督させるのが一番強くねみたいな。もう今はどうやらローマで割とうまくやってるらしくて。で、もうすでに3年目にもかかわらず、どうやらファンからも結構、なんていうんだ、評価されてるみたいなので、もう当分はそっちのこれからないものねだりがあるんだけど、改めて見返しても別にモーリーニョ成績悪くないんだよね。もちろんモーリーニョ特有の選手と揉めまくるっていう問題はあるし、それが当時ポグバと相当広かったっていうのはあるんだろうけど、だとしてもね、正直別に残して全然良かったと思うし、モーリーニョあと2、3人やってたらそれこそプレミアも勝てた可能性は十分あるとは思う。っていうかね、それよりも何よりも、ボードがちゃんとしそうな今の状態でモーリーニョが欲しい僕はっていう感じだよね。皆さんどう思われますか、モーリーニョについて。ぜひですね、コメント欄でご意見。ご意見ない方は、適当な絵文字でも、コメントいただけると、YouTube のアルゴリズム的に有利なので、ぜひともね、ここまで見てくださったっていう方は、していただけると大変嬉しいです。で、それ以外のチャンネル登録、高評価の方もぜひですね、やっていただけるととても嬉しいです。本日の動画はここまでです。それや、冒頭言ってないかもしれないけど、明けましておめでとうございます。すみろれいでした。